Contrary to what many people would hope for, de-dollarization is not something that just happens overnight. Usually, when a currency stops getting used, this is something that is described as it happens gradually, then all at once. And for the time being, and likely years into the future, we are in the gradually phase of that. Which means that every time we see a signpost pointing forward and saying, hey, look, the world's trying to de-dollarize, when I see it, I'll let you know. And when Saudi Arabia says that they are open to settling trade in other currencies, this is a sign. Now, big thanks to GA on Twitter for tagging me, linking this article, as I always appreciate when you guys send me questions, comments, and articles to make videos about. Saudi Arabia's finance minister said that there are no issues with discussing how they settle their trade, whether it's in the dollar, the euro, or the real, or something else. He said, we're not waiving or ruling out any discussion that would help improve trade around the world. Now, obviously, this leads many people to think that they are opening up the door to China here, increasing their relationship with China and starting to move away from their relationship with the US and the dollar. This is because last year, President Xi Jinping visited Riyadh. China committed to making more efforts to buying oil, and that he wanted to settle that trade in the yuan. Now look, globally what's going on here is that we are starting to see more and more competition for the dollar. We are starting to see nations start to look out and say, hey, we don't want what happened to Russia to happen to us. We want to have other options, other relationships, other currencies, so that if by chance the United States decides that they don't want us to be able to use the dollar anymore, we still have other options and we're not screwed. And while the details might look different, the overall path here is the same thing that happens every time a currency fails in a local country. George Gammon on Twitter recently talked about how he's been in Istanbul talking to locals about how they save money. They prefer dollars and then euros and then gold. They use the lira just to transact, just to buy things. He also mentioned that even pricing is transitioning from lira to euros. And it's not just Turkey. You know that I've mentioned many times my friends who live in Lebanon talking about this exact same thing going on. And if you've ever read any books of hyperinflations of currencies, you see this exact same thing happening over and over and over again. Essentially, the government starts to abuse its currency and it starts to drop in value. People don't want to accept it as much anymore because they don't think it will purchase the same amount of stuff tomorrow as it does today. So if I'm going to sell you something, I'm going to try and get dollars for it instead. Whether you're in Turkey, whether you're in Lebanon, whether you're somewhere else experiencing this, they're going to try and get dollars, they're going to try and get euros, they're going to try and get a currency that is not falling in value as quickly. And to the extent that more and more people do this, that means pricing starts to happen in those other currencies as well. Black markets, parallel markets pop up as a currency starts to get destroyed. You start to have the people automatically look for harder and harder currencies. Now, it doesn't mean that that government's currency just stops getting used overnight. It just means that it becomes more of a formality. If I do have to accept the local currency from you, it will be an equivalent amount of whatever I'm selling in dollars or euros or the hard currency. So the pricing constantly changing from 1 hour to the next during hyperinflation, that's just pricing in the local currency. That's just reflecting that local currency's value versus the dollar. Most of the time when that starts to happen, the price of that object in dollars doesn't really change that much. And so this is all taking place and happening on a global scale between countries and the dollar now. That's why during 2022, central banks purchased more gold than they have since 1967. Central banks and governments around the world are looking for a way out of using the dollar. Parallel markets and currencies are forming. While things may persist in being priced in dollars for a very long time, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to hold their value globally or be the best place to save your money. And just because a currency is used as the medium of exchange doesn't mean that it's a good store of value. Just as many nations do, it's possible to store your value in a savings vehicle that does a very good job, historically speaking, of preserving your purchasing power. And then when you need to make a purchase, those are liquid investments that you can sell and turn into whatever medium of exchange you need, whether that's dollars, Bitcoin, euros, or other forms of currency. This also means that there will be many people who believe that store of value and medium of exchange are always going to be served by the same vehicle, the same currency, that will wake up one day with millions of dollars in their bank account and will realize it's not even enough to buy a dozen eggs. And at the rate that eggs are increasing in price today, that could be sooner than many people expect. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.